The following video was shot in 2016 at the Rubber Tramp Rendezvous in Quartzsite, Arizona. It's a class about mobile solar, and it's the big broad strokes, the general idea of how to choose and install solar in your mobile RV, your van, whatever you're traveling in. Bob Wells is the speaker. I could not find this video on Bob's channel, Cheap RV Living, on YouTube. Maybe it's in the forum on his website, cheaprvliving.com. But he's got a ton of videos on solar on his channel. So if you want to check out more, I'll put the link down below. This class is just one of the many exceptional classes that you can find at the Rubber Tramp Rendezvous, and there's one coming up in January 2019. So if you have a chance to get out to Quartzsite, I would highly recommend it. And this is kind of a little taste of what you will find out there.
It's as simple as that. Buy a 100 watt, 200 watt, 400 watt kit, whatever you need, whatever you can afford, or the solar suitcase. You'll see a number of those around camp. If you go and say, hey, can I look at your suitcase, they'll be glad to show you. We'll talk about how to mount it and the advantages of a solar suitcase in just a minute. Now, there's other options. You can buy better quality, and they really are better quality, which you would take from that Renogy isn't good quality, and that isn't at all what I'm saying. You're not going to be unhappy if you buy a Renogy panel. Right in San Diego, they have a couple 3,000 American employees. I think they're superior. I just simply do. And in 20 years, they're going to be here because they're a huge international conglomerate. If there are any big businesses here in 20 years, they'll be here. But is it worth the extra money? Probably not, unless you want to buy the best. So, and also with controllers. Now, with controllers, there's a much bigger difference in quality with controllers. If you buy an American-made premium controller, you're going to get many more features. You're going to get much better. It's going to be made in America, and you're going to call. And there's a very good chance if you call, you will actually, and you have a real problem, you will actually talk to the tech who designed the circuit board, and he'll walk you through it. That's a very good likelihood. I've known people who've done that. I've known people who had one. It wasn't the control Blue Sky. Wasn't the Blue Sky's fault. It was overvolted. And so really, they didn't have to support him. They sent him a new one. He sent him his old one. And I know people who've had Midnight Sun kid controllers, and they also just go above and beyond. So there are reasons to buy a premium American-made controller, but there's a cost, and the main cost is it's going to be more money. But there's a learning curve because you've got to understand all the features it offers. If you just want to plug the thing in, bolt it to your roof, plug the wires together, and forget it, buy Renogy. If you want to make it a little bit of a hobby and get the very best and get the very, very best features out of it, then buy a Kyocera or other. That's not the only good panel. It's the one I prefer, but there are a lot of good solar panels, and you can buy any of them. For controllers, I recommend Blue Sky first, although they don't make big controllers. So for big controllers, Morningstar. I bet there are quite a few Morningstars here. A lot of any other Blue Skies. They're not nearly as popular. One other, and Midnight Solar. Midnight Solar makes a really fine product at a pretty good price, and so you won't go wrong with buying any of those or others. There are a lot of premium brands. AM Solar in Oregon makes good products and sells good products. There's a lot of others. So there's money. There are reasons to spend the money if you're interested in taking the time. The learning curve is steep and hard. If you want to make a hobby out of solar, then do that. Yeah. We're actually going to cover that in a little bit. We're going to do it. Let's just cover it when we get there. So what's the next question? What if I get too little, or if there are so many choices? What if I better buy quality? You can't use all your appliances. What if you can't afford as much as you need? All you can afford is $200. You can barely scrape together $200 to buy a 100-watt kit. You're just going to have to use and stay within your limits. You're going to have to use conservation methods. So just a very good way to save a little power is plug things in first thing in the morning. A hungry battery will take in more power, and you'll give it all day to get it. So plug in your phone and your laptop in the morning when you've got the first sun. Let it be charged. Charge it during the day. Minimize the amount of draw overnight. Get LED lights. Minimize your use of an inverter. Inverters are wasteful. Anything that can be run directly from 12 volt, especially USB, everything on USB can be plugged into 12 volt serial lighter plug. Minimize your use at night. Try and find a 12 volt outlet. Most laptops are 19 volt, and so you're transforming from 12 to 110 back to 19. You're wasting a bunch of power. Try and find a direct 12 volt connection for your laptop on eBay or Amazon, and chances are you can. So just find ways to save all the power you can. A good way is to use AA and AAAs and to charge those, get rechargeable batteries and charge those off the sun, and then put those into your lights and your radio, and that's going to save you some power. So if you can't afford all you want, then learn how to conserve and live within your means.
Bob, can I ask a question about laptop powering?
We really can't get too much detail. Ask really quick.
Well, you said they're 19 volt. If it's a 12 volt system, is there some way to step that up?
There is, but it's a complicated answer, and we just can't answer every question. I'm sorry. I wish we could, but we literally would be here all day. Do I need an inverter? Yes. I think most people are going to want an inverter. There are some things you just simply can't. They've gotten this horrible reputation. Oh, they just waste so much power. There are some things you have to have an inverter for, so get one and use it. Yes, you waste about 10 to 20% of the power, but it's just the way it is. Only have it on when you're actually using it. So I have a satellite receiver dish. It only runs on 110 volt. It cannot be converted to 12. So I've got an inverter and run it, and it's only on when that specific item is on, and then I turn it off. So yeah, you probably do need an inverter. 400 watt inverter will do most people just fine. If not, 800. If you want to use a microwave, then you're up at 2,000. But that's not many of you want to do that. Can I combine a generator and solar? Yes, and it's a good idea. I used to carry a generator, but I have so much solar now that I don't need to. But yes, as a lot of you saw, we ran out 3-4 days of clouds, and you can run out of power, and it would be very nice to have a generator. You can combine them both at the same time, no problem. They each have a voltage regulator of a sorts, and they'll read the other's voltage, and they will not fry your batteries, unless they're defective. If they're defective, they will, but that's not because you have two items on it, it's because they're defective. You can also charge off your alternator. Should you charge off your alternator and solar at the same time? Yes. It's a very good idea, because you get a 3 or 4 days of storm and you lose a bunch of power, then you just drive a trip through town and to recharge. So they work together beautifully. The three work together beautifully. Generator, alternator, and solar. You can use them all three at once, not an issue at all. There will be no damage. Oh, absolutely. There is a fellow here, a friend of mine with wind. He's running a 400 watt wind gen, and he's got over 1,000 watts of solar, and his wind gen. I don't think he carries a generator. He's got plenty of power. But yes, absolutely. Each item will have its own voltage regulator of some kind. The voltage regulator in the car, your charge controller in your solar panel system. The wind generator has its own built-in voltage regulator. It will read the voltage from the other item and not fry your battery. So yes, you can combine them all into one. They'll just go onto one post and stack on top of each other. That's all. Okay, so now we're going to talk about solar panels. There are three. I don't want to go into too much detail, but I don't want to leave out something that's really important. There are three kinds of solar panels: amorphous, monocrystalline, polycrystalline. Amorphous, you probably are never going to buy. They're specialized uses. They're not even a factor. Don't buy an amorphous to install on your system. There are ins and outs of that, and we're not going to go into any of them. Monocrystalline, for as long as I've been around, have been considered the superior. They're a little better. Polycrystalline has always been considered a little brother, not quite as good. And here recently, that's changed, and now there is a general feeling that polycrystalline is actually a little better in low light conditions, cloudy conditions. Is it true? I don't know. People are saying it. I hear it a lot on forums and emails. And is it true? I don't know. I honestly don't know. It could be. I don't know. And there are people who said done tests. We have a guy on our forum. I really recommend our forum. We got some really solar experts. If you're interested in solar, that's where I really recommend it. And so he's done tests, and he says yes. He gets actually more light, and he gets more power out of low light with poly than with mono. Buy him on price. That's my general recommendation. I don't think there's enough difference between poly and mono. Buy them on price. But that's just an opinion. But one important thing about panels is they come in high and low voltage. For a long time they were 12 volt panels. When we talk about voltage on solar or on anything, it's nominal. Nominal means in name only. It's a 12 volt panel, but if your battery and your car is 12 volt, if your car is at 12 volt, your battery is dead. Your battery is on its way to the end. So it's in name only. It describes a system. A 12 volt battery can range from 15 volts down to 10 volts. They're all 12 volt systems, but it's a name only. The same thing with solar panels. A 12 volt solar panel is in name only. It will probably be 18 volts. The reason they're higher is that because when the sun, and in the winter and the sun is low, or when you have clouds, the voltage drops. If the voltage drops, so they start it at 18 volts, so that when it drops, they're still putting in 15 volts into your battery. That's why they're 18 volt. Your battery will take no more than 15, maybe 16, but not for very long. You're equalizing and you're damaging if you leave it on. So you want about 14 going into your panel, between 14 and 15 into your battery, but your panel's putting out 18, because in bad weather, bad light, you will still get 14 or 15. That's why they're high. So a 12 volt panel, solar panel, will be anywhere from 18 to 24 volts. That's what it'll put out all the time, if under good light. A 24 volt panel will put out from 24 volts to 36 volts. A 36 volt panel will put out from 36 volts to 72 volts and up. And you can get some really high voltages. Why are so many of them so very high? Because they're designed to go on houses. Once people became common to put solar panels on houses, they needed higher voltages because they would run really long strings of panels. I mean, 100 panels on a ranch barn is not uncommon. So you got a very long string, you need high voltages, or you're going to have a really thick wire. High voltages can use a smaller wire. So they use a high voltage panel so you can run a smaller wire. There are other advantages. There's a lot of efficiency advantages. So you've got to make sure that you match your controller to your panel, and your controller will match the panel. Now, we're going to look at John's tomorrow, tonight, tomorrow at 4, John's actually a Rhenology representative, and he can answer a lot of your questions. He's going to install a solar panel on his rig right here, right? And so you can come and watch. He's got a complete system. He's just adding a second 100-watt panel. So you can actually come and watch a panel be installed.
When is that?
Tomorrow at 4. No, 2, I'm sorry.
2.
Everything is at 2. Today's Saturday, tomorrow Sunday at 2 o'clock.
Right in here.
Right here. So let's take a quick look at his panel. Panels. This is the back of his panel. So this is the back of his panel, and it's using what is a standard MC4 connection. These are National Housing Code standard. If you install this on a house, this is what it has to have to meet the National Electrical Code. That is an MC4 connector. They're universal. Most of your panels will come with that. A few panels still come with 12-volt junction boxes, but not many. So this is standard. And then we'll just flip it over. And this is what, are these poly or mono?
That's mono.
Mono? There's probably a way to know by looking, but I don't know what it is.
If they're a different, more gray color, they're poly.
Okay. A lot of people worry they're fragile. This is safety glass. You're not just going to break this. A little light hail isn't going to impact it. It's going to be safe. What could damage it is a very heavy hail. That can do it. You could hit it with a sledgehammer and break this. This is safety glass, like in your car. It's not fragile. You don't want to beat it up, but just normal handling is going to be perfectly safe. So hang on to that. The good thing about the MC4s is MC4 connectors with like this. So this would go into the MC4. It would just snap in, and then a second one can be run into the other outlet. And they can run a string of 100 panels together just with this. On down the road it goes. And this makes it very easy to put 2 or 4 together on your roof. So that's an MC4 connector, and this is now nearly the universal standard. You can still buy junction boxes, which is plain bare wires, but not very often. Thanks. Well, so that gives you an idea of what the MC4 is and what it looks like. It really simplifies things. If you buy a kit, what you're going to do is you'll buy an MC4 extension cable, and it'll have a male and female. You'll buy it twice. You'll buy it twice as long as you need it, and cut it in half in the middle. And then you'll have the MC4 connections on one end and bare wires on the other, and that will go into your charge controller. So you'll buy it, you'll get extensions long enough to go to the charge controller, cut that in half, and then wire it to your charge controller.
There's the other handout. If you have questions on how exactly it's done.
Yeah, I'm going to hand out a Renogy sheet here in just a second. Now, one of your questions is going to be, how are you going to attach it? That's going to be your next thought. How am I going to attach this? Four obvious ways to attach it. Just bolts with a roof. Well, let's start with the ladder rack. I've got ladder racks, and I just use 2x4s, and they're bolted to the 2x4, the panel, and then that is U-bolts to the crossbar. Very simple. You still need a wire, drill a hole to get the wire through, but no holes. And there's no really problem with drilling holes in your roof. I mean, it's not like you drill a hole in your roof, the van's going to crumble and rust and leak. It's very easy to cut a hole in your roof or drill a hole in your roof and keep it watertight, just with a good Dicor caulk. Or there's a lot of products made for RVs, and it's not an issue. Don't worry nearly so much about cutting a hole in your roof or drilling a hole in your roof. I know it's scary. The first time you do it, it's really scary. I cut a roof vent out and I drill a hole and cut a big 14 by 14 hole, and it's no big deal. So the ladder rack is the easiest if you've got a plain van. Bolts, if you've got an SUV and you want to just bolt it right to your roof or a car or to your van, you drill the hole, you bolt it to the roof. You use feet. The Renogy kit comes with either L feet or Z feet, whatever. They'll come with one or the other. And let's see, what was the next? 3M tape. I know that sounds weird, but you can buy 3M tape that will keep your solar panel on your roof. You can do it directly. One of the odd things about solar panels is they like cold. The colder they are, the more efficient they are. They work great in space because it's very cold. So you want to leave an air gap between the panel and your roof, so there'll be ventilation to carry the heat out. It's in the sun all summer at 100 degrees, 110 degrees, it gets hot. You want ventilation, so you want a gap between the panel and the roof. So if you're going to use 3M tape, and yes, it sounds dangerous and ridiculous, but it works. 3M makes a VHB, very high bond tape that will actually work, or Eternabond makes the tape, I guess. And I would use an L aluminum bracket and bolt it to the bracket and tape the L angle iron. I don't even know how the name of that is, but it's aluminum. It's angle iron except it's aluminum. And then tape that to the roof, bolt the panel to the angle iron, and then you can take it off and remove it. But you want the full length, so you get the full tape bond. You don't want just feet. You want the whole length of the panel if you're going to use that. I have friends who've done that, and it works fine. Sounds scary. Velcro. If you buy a flexible panel, one of your big problems are you guys with the high tops with the curvy roof, the fiberglass roofs. If you know how to work with fiberglass, and I don't, you can actually bolt it to the roof. You can use feet. You're going to have to find someone that knows how, and I don't. Another way is to buy a flexible panel and Velcro it to the roof. Again, that sounds ridiculous, Velcro, but it works. And there's an industrial Velcro that you can Velcro that right directly to your roof. And Eternabond bolts. Okay, so that's how you can mount it to your roof. And that's going to probably for most of you be the scariest part. Yeah.
The Velcro, they're starting to back off on it now because they've had too many panels because they're right directly against the roof. They've overheated and damaged.
I've wondered about how that, because it's got to get hot in there.
So that's why Renogy hasn't produced any more flexible panels lately.
Yeah, Renogy stopped making them. The word I heard was that they had a production problem, but it was the feet. It was they're getting hot.
They couldn't produce a product that they could stand behind.
Right, yeah, so they don't make them anymore. Again, that's a good reason to like Renogy. Not that they made a bad product, but they stood behind it and made it right when it went bad. That's the important thing. And they didn't keep selling them like Ford did with their crappy engines. Just produce a terrible engine and just keep selling. Okay, colder the better. We'll do that in a little bit. Okay, so any other questions about solar panels? Have I tried to cover everything? There's an advantage to buying. The big thing about a solar panel is you go up and you look and you see exactly how much room do I have on my roof, how many can I fit. Can I only fit one great big panel? Then you buy one great big panel. Can I fit a little one here and another little one here and maybe a little one right there? Then that's what you buy. Buy all you can afford and buy all you can fit. And yeah, I'm sorry, now you have a question?
Someone said that if for safety, put like a wind guard in front of the solar panels on your roof so that the wind is blowing over and your solar panel doesn't.
You can do that. I don't think it's an issue, but you can if you want. Yeah, I don't have one of mine. Mine sticks way up in the air, and I haven't ever given it a thought. But you can if you want to stick up a wind guard. And I lost my train of thought. Something I wanted to cover too. So buy the panel to size it to your roof. If you need 3 little ones to fit around obstacles on the roof, or one great big one, there is an advantage to buying great big panels. I had a friend who wanted 600 watts, so he bought 2 350-watt Kyocera's. He had an extended van. They took his whole roof, and he had 600 watts. The upper limit of what most of us can get on a roof is 500 to 600 on a van, an extended van. So buy all you can. Controllers, 2 kinds of controllers, PWM, MPTT. What's the difference? PWMs are dumb, really dumb. Stands for Power Wave Management. It's dumb controller. It doesn't do anything. It steps the voltage down and does nothing else. It makes sure your battery doesn't get fried. Here's your problem. You've got an 18-volt panel. You've got a 12-volt battery. It's got to step it down. That's its only job, is to waste your power. That's its job, why it was created. It's going to take that 18 volts, throw 14 of them away. They're gone. You don't use them. They never get in your battery. And it puts 12 to 14 in your battery, whichever it'll take. The difference is wasted, flushed, toilet. And MPPT takes the 18 volts, steps it down to whatever the battery wants, 12, 13, 14, and increases the amps. That takes real electrical design to be able to step down the voltage and increase the amps. And that's what it does. Your battery puts out 7 amps at 18 volts. All of them get in. It steps it down to 12. Well, let's cut it now, just so I can have round numbers, and I can't think that fast. It cuts it down to 9 volts at 14 amps. So it steps down the voltage and equally increases the amps. You get all the power your panel creates into your battery. That's what you're buying when you buy MPPT, multi-power point tracking. Should you spend their extra money? You've bought a smarter controller capable of doing more, and it's going to cost you more money. That I guess everyone's going to have to figure out for themselves. With Renogy, you can buy. The argument is this: you don't spend the extra 70 to 100 or even more on an MPPT controller. You buy an extra panel and put it on your roof. What if you don't have room for an extra panel? What if you want you've got 300 watts you can get on your roof and you want all 300 watts? Then you have to buy an MPPT because you're not getting 300 watts. You're losing a third of them to a dumb controller. You're only getting 200 put into your battery. If you want all 300 going into your battery and that's all you can put on your roof, buy MPPT. My recommendation is everyone should buy MPPT. However, there are times when it might be better to buy the extra panel or just do without the power. Let it go flush down the toilet. It just strikes me as really wrong to flush power down the toilet that I've paid money for. I'd rather buy a smarter controller and buy the controller that'll work and get all my power that I bought into my. I hate flushing it down the toilet. So there are going to be people who argue both ways. My advice is buy MPPT. It's worth the extra money. Their features, and then another difference, and here's the big problem. High quality MPPT controllers are very expensive. You can spend $500 on a big MPPT controller. And so people look at the $500 controller or a $30, and that's what a cheap PWM controller is $30. So they say, well, I could buy a controller for $30 or $500. I'm not spending $500. You're going to get an awful lot more for that $500. First, you're going to get American made. You're going to talk to the guy who designed it, and he's going to stand behind it better. It's going to have many, many more features. And if you will learn the features, absorption voltages, you can set a good controller, the absorption voltage from 14 to 15, and some AGMs demand that kind of voltages, AGM batteries. They want that battery, or they'll never get fully charged. You can set how long it will hold that voltage. An AGM might want 14.8 for 2 hours to be full, and it will never get full without it. And you cannot do that with a $30 AGM control, PMW controller. It's a death sentence for your panel. So you're buying features for that money. You're buying quality for the money. So, and you're buying size. A 60 amp, $500 controller can handle 600 watts or more. And so you can keep adding panels to one controller. You buy a $30 controller, you got to buy another $30 controller when you add a panel, which isn't a bad idea either. Then you get redundancy. But so I'm just giving you the pros and cons of both sides. You can each make your own decisions. Warranty support's a big deal. Like I said, I've friends who've had problems with both Blue Sky and Midnight Solar, and I'm sure it's true of all of them. And support and help, and got a bad one, they'll replace it immediately. Voltages. A PWM controller cannot handle high voltages. You buy a 36 volt panel, you will fry your PWM controller. You cannot. You've got to spend the money and buy an MPPT, which will take a 36 volt coming in off your panel, step it down, put it into your battery at the right voltage that your battery wants, and up the amps. So every bit of the power you just bought and paid for with your hard-earned money goes into your battery. That's what an MPP does. So do not get close to the limit of your voltage on your controller, because panels under the right condition, a cold day, full sun, can overvolt. They will not only produce the full voltage they claim they will produce, they will create more. So if you buy your controller will say it will handle this many watts and this much voltage. If you buy a controller that says it will handle 24 volts and you buy a 28 volt panel and it spikes, you can very well fry your controller. And I've seen a number of them I've seen a number of controllers fried from that very reason. Make sure you've got a little comfort zone in the amps and volts of the controllers you buy. Buy too big. That's let me just make it that simple. Buy more controller than you think you need, both in amps and volts. Okay, let's talk about batteries then. 3 kinds of batteries: starter batteries, marine batteries, deep cycle batteries. Here's an easy way to think of them. A starter battery is a sprinter. It runs like hell, and then it rests. That's just exactly what your star carding battery does. It puts out a huge amount of volts to get your car running, and then it rests. It may not run again all day. It works once a day, and maybe you'll go to the store and you'll work it again, and it'll run twice. You go to another store, and then you go home, and then it's worked 3 times, and it's rested and gotten fully charged after every time. It's a sprinter. That's all it can do, is a sprinter. The next battery is a marine, and it's a middle distance runner. So it's pretty darn fast. It will start your car. It will start your battery. It will start a boat or a car. It'll start your van. And it'll do it pretty often. It'll run a pretty long distance, and then it dies. But it wants quite a bit of rest between each one. It wants to get full. That's how a battery rests. You bring it back to full charge. So the final is a deep cycle battery, and that is a marathoner. It's going to start running in the morning, and it's going to run all day. You're going to want to run 100 miles? Let's go. It's not going to stop and rest along the way. It might walk a little bit, but it's not going to sit down and say, I got to recharge my batteries. It's going to get a gel and eat a gel or a candy bar along the way. He's going to stop running, and he's just going to run. Some of these guys are pretty amazing what they can do. It doesn't need a lot of rest. It just wants to work. And that's what a deep cycle battery does. You can, the perfect example is golf carts. You buy a golf cart battery, you put it in your golf cart, you charge it overnight, and it runs. What's it do? It runs all day. They rent those things out, and the guy runs it around the golf course. They goes to the next guy, it runs 8 hours a day, then it's got overnight to rest. It's got to rest, they all have to rest. It's how long will they run between rests. And a deep cycle will run a long, long ways. And that's what you want in your house battery. You want it to go a long ways. And so when the sun comes up in the morning and the power goes in, you want it to be ready to go. And you want it to get it completely full. And then at night, when the sun goes down, you're going to draw on it all night, and it'll run a long time. Your starter battery will not. Yeah, you use it all day while the sun's coming in, that's fine. At night, when the sun goes down and you're still using it, it will die very, very quickly because it wants to be full all the time. It wants to be recharged. Got to rest, got to rest, got to rest. Go like hell, rest. It won't do that if you're drawing it from 6 o'clock till midnight with your lights and your radio and your laptop. So you want to buy a deep cycle. The Marine is a hybrid. It's kind of a starter. It will start a car. It will start I have a Marine battery in my starting battery. I don't have a starting battery. It will start your battery, but it will also do a fair amount of running appliances, house appliances. It's a hybrid, and like all hybrids, it's a compromise. It does two jobs, neither well. The starter battery is a better starter battery, and a deep cycle battery is a much better deep cycle battery. So, is it okay to buy a Marine? Yes, but know that it won't last as long or do as good a job. But there's still times when they're cheap enough and it's worth buying a Marine battery. If it's all you can afford, buy it. A good Marine battery will still last you quite a while and you'll be happy with it. Might last you a year or two. If you get a good warranty, you just replace it when it goes bad. So, now, let's talk about what a cycle is. We're talking about deep cycles, and that's what we're talking about. A starter battery has a cycle of turn the engine on, start the engine, that's its whole cycle. It might run down 10, 20%, 30% on that one cycle. Then it comes right back to full. And it'll do that a lot of times. I mean, getting 10 years out of a starting battery is not terribly unusual. That little deep, very shallow cycle, it'll do that a lot. Now, a Marine battery, on the other hand, is designed to start the Marine engine and then also troll. Put a trolling motor on it and go slowly, and not a complete deep cycle. Now, your golf cart, on the other hand, is intended to go to 50% on a daily basis. You buy a golf cart and you can run it down to 50%. Run around the golf cart for 8 hours a day. You run it down to 50. You recharge it that night. It's designed to do that. A discharge to 50% is a deep cycle, one deep cycle. A good deep cycle battery could possibly give you 1,000 deep cycles to 50%. And that's why they spend the money to get them, because that guy can rent that thing out all day, every day for 3 years and still have a battery and then have to replace it. Your starting battery, you run it down to 50%, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 times, you throw the battery away. It's gone. It will not deep cycle. It won't do it for long. It wants 20 to 30% and instant recharge. And anything else, and it'll die. So you buy a deep cycle battery as a house battery. The Marine is a compromise between the two. It will work. Deep cycle is better. You're almost certainly better off to buy 6-volt batteries. They are intended for that deep cycle 1,000 times. And if you're careful and you don't take it to 50%, say you only take your house battery down to 50% on a battery is 12.2, full battery is 12.6, 12.7, 50% cycle is 12.2. Say every night you only drop it down to 12.5, 12.4. That battery will last 10 years. because it's never going into a full deep cycle and you're recharging it all the time. So the better you treat your battery, the longer it lasts. Getting 10 years out of a quality battery, if you treat it right, is entirely possible. So, 3 kinds of batteries. Now we talked about the 3 purposes and categories of batteries, and we're going to talk about the chemistry of the battery. What's inside that case? 3 kinds. Flooded wet cell means it's got caps. Take cap off, you look in there, you see if there's enough water, you add distilled water. That's a flooded wet cell. Most of you have flooded wet cells. Well, AGM is becoming real popular, but the other is AGM, absorbed glass mat, no caps, you can't open them, they're sealed, you never open them, you tear them apart, you've destroyed them. And finally, gels, which is the same thing, it's sealed, you can't take them apart, but it's the same part. In that sense, the chemistry inside is quite different. I don't recommend gels. Don't buy a gel if you can avoid it. If it's just so cheap and then it might be worth buying a gel, buy either AGM or flooded. An AGM will cost about twice as much. You can buy a Trojan T105 golf cart for about $125 here in town, and your cheapest AGM golf cart will be about $250. You have to buy them in pairs, so you're going to spend about $250 for a pair of Trojan T105s, which is a very high quality battery. Should get 1,000 cycles if you treat it right. And you can buy lifelines. A lifeline would be $600 for a pair of AGMs, a lot of money. You better treat them really well. You screw them up and they die in a year or two, then you've just thrown away $600. So one of my recommendations to most people is buy a cheap battery to start with. If this is your first foray into solar, buy a cheap battery. So if you wreck it in a year, you don't mind it so much. Buy a Marine. That's a good time to buy a Marine. Your first solar kit, go down and buy a Walmart Marine. You get 2 years out of it. It still may be under warranty. You might get something back for it, and you've only lost 80, 90, 100 bucks instead of 500. Once you figure out what you're doing and how to do it, then buy the $500 battery. Why would you buy AGM over flooded? Because they cost twice as much. Flooded require your maintenance. You've got to take the cap off. You've got to add distilled water. If you don't, they'll go dry and you'll destroy them. If you're going to put the battery somewhere you can't ever get to it, buy AGM, because you're going to destroy those wet cells and you're going to have to get them out of there. So if they're very hard to get to, be honest with yourself. If you're lazy, buy AGM, because you're going to destroy. And that's, I don't mean that, that sounds horrible, but if you're just a guy who doesn't want to mess with a battery, buy AGM. You're going to be, even if it's more and you have to replace it, it's still well worth it, because you're going to kill your flooded, so why even spend the money on it? If you're fairly diligent, you'll keep the water up, you'll take care of them. Flooded are just as good a battery, and they will last you as long and be much less money to buy. One more consideration on batteries is outgassing. Flooded, all batteries outgas. AGMs outgas extremely little. Flooded don't outgas nearly as much as we think they do, but they definitely outgas. They all do. They outgas a lot when they're taking a big charge. So if you put them on a 100 amp battery charger and you're putting in 40 or 50 amps into your battery bank, you're going to get a lot of gas coming out of it. I mean, a lot of gas coming out of it. On the other hand, if you hook it up to a 200 watt solar panel, you're going to get virtually no gas coming out of it. You're getting gas. It is coming out. And if you are sensitive to smells or noise or anything, I have friends who have asthma who cannot have a flooded wet battery in their van. It makes them literally sick. There is a gas coming out of it. I have always had flooded wet cells in my van with me. I don't ever smell it. The gas doesn't bother me. I've had no danger. When I'm charging them with low power solar, the off-gassing is so minimal that to me it's just not even an issue. So I'm going to say go ahead and if you can tolerate the risk, and it is a risk, they do explode. They do off-gas acid. They don't off-gas acid. They lose acid. You can get acid out of it, and I have had a battery. I've lost acid out of a flooded wet cell in my van. To my mind, the risk is so small, I will do it. I'm not telling you to do it. You have to assess the risk, and most of you are risk averse and will not do it, and that's fine. spend the money and get the AGM. You can put a flooded wet cell in a, thank you. You can put a flooded wet cell in a battery box, thank you, and it will be just fine. You put a battery box and you vent it, just run a hose from the battery box to the outside, and it will just naturally vent. And then there kind of solves your whole problem, and you've saved $150 at least on AGMs just for buying the box and running a vent out. That's a good solution to the whole flooded battery. AGMs are very, very picky in how you charge them. Most of them want a very high charge. They all want to be fully charged every day. They're not nearly as tolerant as flooded wet cells. As a rule, particularly Lifeline wants a big charge every day, and Odyssey is also the same way. They want a big charge. They want in the 14s, 14.1, 14.4, 15. Some of them will tell you to take an absorption voltage. That's the stage at which it's just absorbing battery, to give it 15 volts for a couple, 3 hours. And so I have a friend who has an AGM, and he has a Blue Sky, and he called them and they said, we want you to give it 14.8 for 2 hours. So his Blue Sky controller would let him set the absorption and the time. He's got it set for 14.8 for 2 hours, and that battery will last him 10 years. If it doesn't last him 10 years, I'd be surprised, because he has plenty of solar and he's keeping his battery very happy. You got to have a lot of solar to get 14.8 for 2 hours. You got to have a big panel, big array of panels. So AGMs are much touchier to keep them alive for long periods of time. They want a lot of power. Okay. Monitoring. Let's talk about that, because this is a real source of confusion for a lot of people with solar panels. You got your solar panel set up. You've got a display on your controller. It says your battery is running at 14 volts. You think, I got a 12-volt battery. Why am I getting 14 volts into it? When a battery is being charged, power's going in, or discharged, power's coming out, it gives a false reading. Always. They'll never be right unless you buy a battery monitor and set up a shunt, and you're spending some money, and you're going to have to know how to do that. It's always going to give you a false reading. As soon as the power goes out, sun sets, you'll watch it go down. While it's still got full power from the sun, it'll be 14 volts. The sun will start going down. It'll read 13.4, and then the sun goes down. It'll read 13.1, and then you start drawing something off it. It'll drop down to 12.8. You start drawing quite a bit off it. It'll drop down to 12.6. You draw more, and it'll drop all the way down to 12.2. None of those were accurate. None of those were the actual state of your battery at that moment, because it gives a false reading when it's being charged and discharged. When will it give you an accurate reading? You turn everything off, the next morning, that's an accurate reading. It's a rested battery. You want your battery to rest. And after it's rested, nothing going in, nothing going out, it will be a reasonably accurate. It'll be within a tenth. And that's all you need to know. If it says it's at 12.4.5, well, 0.45, then that's about what it's going to be. So first thing in the morning, check your battery monitor or put a voltmeter on it, and that's going to be the voltage of your battery. And just always be aware that if it says 14 volt, as soon as you cut the power out, it'll drop right away to 12.8, which is what it should be, 12.6. If it drops right away without anything being discharged down to 12.4, you've got a problem with your battery. That battery's in trouble. It's on its last leg. So just be aware that the number you're seeing on your voltmeter, unless you have set up an accurate voltmeter, like a trimetric, that's a very famous kind of a brand name. You have to set up a shunt on the negative bar, and it's a couple $100, and you got to know what you're doing, and everything's got to be run through the negative bar, the shunt. Then it's always going to be accurate, but most of you aren't going to do that. And you can if you want, if you're on a learning curve. Just know that it's wrong, and it's close to right. And if you know it's reading high, then you're fine. And after you've watched it for a while, and check it in the morning, and if it reads 12.4 next morning, that's just right. That's right where you want your battery to be. If the next morning it reads 10.6, you got a big, big problem. You're drawing way too much or your battery's shot. So that's just it's a matter of watching it and learning it. Knowing when it's charging, it's reading too high. When it's discharging, it's reading too low. Okay. Now, how to get your power out of the battery. Yeah.
Okay, someone told me that if you leave your panels hooked up to your batteries, it drains your batteries.
No.
I didn't think that.
No, a properly set up charge controller will prevent power from going backwards. Yeah, that's just one of it. It has two jobs: reduce the power and not fry the battery, not allow the battery to run down at night.
Okay, this person's actually running his panel off a battery without a control.
Yeah, he's got
So
problems.
then he is.
Don't do that.
Okay.
It's worth $30 to buy a cheap controller.
Well, that's
I mean,
what I told him.
it's $30. If that saves your batteries, if that gives you another year out of your battery, which it will, it'll give you many more than one more year, it's worth $30. I mean, that's just crazy. Buy $30 and buy a cheap controller. So how do you get power out of your battery? So here you got, your system's going great, but man, how do I watch my TV? How do I charge my laptop? How do I charge my cell phone? Two ways you got 2 ways you're going to get power out mainly. I recommend an inverter and a fuse block. Unfortunately, I don't have a fuse block to demonstrate for you. You connect two wires, pretty big wires, 6 gauge probably minimum, from your fuse block to the battery, and you put a fuse at the battery. Everything should be fused at the battery on the positive wire generally. And then, there's a dog looks just like my old one. Makes me sad. Beautiful dog. You all wanted to know that. So, boy, that looks just like home. I thought it was home. You want to fuse everything, goes to your battery. And then everything else, so you've got, you need to run USBs for all your devices, and you want some cigarette lighter plugs. They go into the fuse block and not in directly back to the battery. You'll save the distance of the wire. Everything will automatically be fused at the fuse block, and it just will prevent a clusterfuck at your battery, and it will be. If you wire 10 things to your battery, you got a mass of wires, it's going to be a nightmare. You run the fuse block to the battery, everything to the fuse block. It's nice and neat and organized. It's not hard to do. I actually have a post on my blog, how to install a fuse block. It's not that complicated. It's nothing in installing electricity is that complicated that we're talking about. It's all red to red, positive to positive. And that's all installing a fuse block is. You get your 6 foot of, or whatever, how long is the 6 gauge wire, and you strip the 2 ends. You get a wire stripper, and you crimp on a connector. And I just happen to have a couple connectors here. So this is a ring connector. This would crimp on, you can't see that. You would crimp it on to the wire, and then you'd put this on the, it's got a hole in it, and you'd put this on the battery post, and then that's how the connection, it's just that simple, strip and crimp. And at the other end, you may have to use a butt connector somewhere along the line to put 2 wires together to make them longer. At the other end, you would probably use a spade connector to go into the fuse block. It looks like a ring, except it's got an open end. It looks like a fork, the tines of a fork, 2 tines. And it's really much simpler than you think. You practice stripping and crimping so you can jerk on them and they don't come apart. It's not that hard, and it's red to red, positive to positive, black to black, negative to negative, all the way through. And the wiring is just that simple. It's not that complicated. In fact, will you have to do something? Well, yeah, you'll have to connect to your whatever your charge control. So he'll do a simple strip and crimp tomorrow here at 3.
Well, tomorrow
2.
everything's going to be just plug and play.
Well, you got to get it into your controller.
It's going to be plug and play.
What do you have on your controller? You're not getting MC4s into your controller. You got MC4s going into your controller?
No, those hook onto the MC4s. That's all it's going to be to add onto the system. All you have to
Oh,
do is
right, because you're already into the controller.
Yeah.
Right, you've already pre-wired. Yes. So sorry, there won't be any stripping and crimping.
But we'll have everything set up so
Right.
things will be there. They can ask questions. And
Right. He's adding on to an existing system, which is nothing but MC4 multipliers. So that'll be really simple. There's nothing to it. You can watch videos on YouTube on how to strip and crimp. once you can learn how to strip and crimp, you can do all this stuff. You really can. It's red to red, black to black, all the way through, positive to positive. So add a fuse block, and you run all your 12-volt items, your cigarette lighter plugs, your USB adapters to the fuse block. The other is an inverter, and that's going to be hardwired. It should be hardwired directly and fused directly to your battery post, positive to positive, negative to negative. A red wire goes on the positive and goes to the little, there'll be a little plus at the battery, there'll be a little plus at the inverter, and you crimp on a ring connector and put it on the inverter. You'll have a thing that screws off a bolt. You put the ring connector over it, you screw it back on, positive to positive, red to red, and you're done. You've got installed your inverter. You've got hardwired your inverter. Same with the negative. Very simple stuff. You'll have to make 4 strips and crimps, and you're done. And it's hardwired. And then you could run your 110 volts off your inverter. I have a handout that John provided this handout that shows the 4 major components: the panels coming in, the MC4 connectors, the charge controller going to the batteries, from the batteries to the inverter. And I should have handed it out a little.